Well, hello everyone, and welcome to another edition of Talking Bullion. Well, today we're going to take a look at the Standing Liberty Quarter. This is a 25-cent coin that was struck by the U.S. Mint from 1960 to 1930, and I have a few of them here, but the thing is, I don't have a lot of them. I've bought a lot of junk silver in my day, 90% silver, constitutional silver, and the only ones I have are the ones that came whenever I got some quarters, because I don't seek to buy these, because as we'll see in a little bit, they're usually pretty wore down, and if you're going to buy any in really good condition, you're going to pay a lot of money. And because I'm typically a stacker, I don't want to pay a lot of money for my 90% silver. I want to get as much as I can for as least as I can. So why don't we go ahead and take a look. Alright, as I mentioned earlier, this coin was made between 1916 and 1930, and there was also two modifications to the original design. Most famously, one of the modifications was to cover up Liberty's bare breast. That's right, we had some nudity on this coin. The series had been considered one of prime numismatic interest. Alright, so why don't we take a quick look at one of these. I've got a picture of a 1916 quarter here, and you can see the bare breast. You can see how the clothing comes across the chest and doesn't cover the right side of the chest. So that's how it was originally issued when it first came out. I can see how that would have caused quite a bit of controversy. I would think that that would not have been appropriate for that time period. Really, probably any time period, right? So it caused some people to be pretty concerned with why they would put that on a coin. But during that time in 1916, the quarter dollar was one of only 3 silver denominations to receive a new design, replacing the previous designs created by Charles Barber. So before we take a look at these SLQs, we're talking about Charles Barber design. Most people know what a Barber quarter looks like, but if you don't, here's what the Standing Liberty quarter replaced. The Barber quarter, and on the back was an eagle. And again, these quarters are a lot like the Standing Liberty quarters, where, you know, if you're going to get them as regular junk silver, they're going to be pretty wore down unless you want to pay big bucks for them. So this is the Barber quarter. This is what the Standing Liberty quarter replaced. So during that process where they wanted to replace the 3 silver denominations, they had a competition. As I've talked about in a few of my other videos, Adolph A. Weinman would create the winning design for both the dime and the half dollar, while Herman A. McNeil would create their winning design for the quarter. So Weinman had the other 2 created, which are pretty popular coins. Mercury dime was one of them, and the Walking Liberty half dollar was the other one. And then Herman McNeil created the Standing Liberty quarter. And here it is, and you can see it's pretty wore down. I can't even see the date on this one. We'll take a look at the back, and we'll get into some of the details about how this was designed and what's on there. But I thought I'd show you some here as we talk. So you'll be able to see in this picture I pull up that McNeil's original obverse design features a standing figure of Liberty within the opening of a small gate, or in McNeil's words, to the gateway of the country. She holds a shield in her left hand and an olive branch in her right. The gate is adorned with 13 stars and the motto, "In God We Trust," split over both sides. The designer's initial M can be seen on the right side of the gate next to the lowest star. The inscription Liberty appears above, with the date placed on the pedestal below. It's a pretty cool design, but it's a little different. Not really something I'd expect. I don't know, just coming through the gate. Doesn't really necessarily look like a gate to me, but still pretty cool coin, I think. It has some great history as part of it. Now on the back of the coin, the reverse design features an eagle in flight with the inscriptions, United States of America, and E pluribus unum above and $quarter below. 13 stars are present, arranged 7 to the left and 6 to the right. This is pretty cool, the backside of this coin. I love the eagle in flight. It looks pretty cool. I think it's well designed. It's not all busy. It doesn't have a lot of things going on. It just is a very classy, classic design in my humble opinion. So we'll pull up a picture of the Type 1 SLQ, or Standing Liberty Quarter. Let's talk about that for a minute. So the initial design of the Type 1, or No Stars Below Eagle, was struck in 1916 and during the first few months of 1917. This version featured a depiction of Liberty with an exposed breast, and according to numismatic lore, there was public outcry to cover her up. However, recent research of correspondence between McNeil and the Mint has shown that the appearance was altered at the request of McNeil, who felt the design was not up to his usual standards. So a little bit of controversy there. It was thought that it was covered up because of the bare breast and that people didn't like it, but now they're saying that McNeil wanted to redesign it because he didn't think it was up to his usual standards, which seems a little funny afterwards that he would come back and make that claim. But anyway, it was redesigned. That's the bottom line. Alright, so now let's take a look at the Type 2. So this is what the Type 2 looks like. This is the modified design, or the Stars Below Eagle design, and that would be introduced during the latter part of 1917. The design includes an overall strengthening of the devices on both sides of the coin, in addition to the two notable changes. On the obverse, Liberty now wears a suit of chainmail. On the reverse, the eagles move towards the center and the stars are rearranged with 5 to each side and 3 below. Alright, so let me pull up a better picture of this chainmail suit that they're talking about. So here's a 1924 D, and it gives you a really good picture of what they're talking about when they say chainmail. It's just what they called that type of suit back then, was a chainmail. The second modification to the design would occur in 1925 when the area containing the date was recessed. Prior to this, the date was placed at the same relief as the other parts of the design, which allowed it to be completely worn away in circulation. By placing the date in a recessed area, it would be better protected from wear. So let me show you that. So we took out this one here, and the first one I pulled out was exactly that. Can't even see a date on it. It's been completely wore off. And that's true on, a few of these that I have. You can see dates are wore off. But I do have some with the dates on them, so let's get to some of those. Here's one, 1925. And that's when the change occurred, right? It was in 1925. So here's another one, but still pretty wore down. These things were heavily circulated. It's another 25. So another 25. Looks like that's most of what I have. 25. And they're all in pretty poor condition. There's a 26. There's a 26. There's a 27. And let's see what we have here. A 30. I think the rest of these are going to be 30s. Nope. There's a 28 snuck in there on us. And a 30. So as a 25 and beyond, we have some dates. Before that, we have no idea what year these are because they're all wore down. Let's take a look at the eagles. I don't have any Type 1 eagles. Mine all have the 3 stars underneath, which was changed when they did the Type 2. 3 stars, 5 on either side. But yeah, that eagle's pretty cool looking, flying. So this is all I have. So what I have $1. I have $2, I have $3.50 face value in standing Liberty quarters. So I'll take them. It's nice to have some, but like I said, I don't really want to pay the high prices for them. I don't believe that I'd probably recover those funds. And I'm more of a stacker. I'm just looking for the silver. And these are going to be pretty light on the silver when they're wore this much. You can tell just by picking it up. You can feel how thin it is. It is really thin. Let me see. I've got a Washington quarter here. What year is this? 1963. Let's just take one of these and put it next to it. I don't know. Are we going to be able to see the difference? Guess we can't tell that much. See if I can get this to focus. But it is quite a bit thinner. So the silver content of these has got to be quite a bit less. And that's primarily why I don't buy them. But they're still very cool for the history of the U.S. and have some great stories behind them. And imagine if coins have this much wear on them. Imagine how many pockets they're in and the kind of things that they bought over the years. It's just such a cool thought process. Now, another interesting fact about the Standing Liberty Quarter is it's the only 20th century regular issue U.S. coin for which no proof coins were struck. So they didn't make any proof coins on these when they did on just about everything else. So that's pretty interesting. Not really sure why they didn't. You won't find any. And also, the Standing Liberty Quarter was struck at the Philadelphia Mint from 1916 to 1930, which we talked about, with the exception of only 1922, when no quarters were struck at the Mint. So in 1922, there was no quarters struck. It's kind of interesting that there was that one year that they didn't strike any quarters, but also there was another year when there wasn't any quarter struck. The Standing Liberty Quarter was discontinued in 1931, a year in which no quarters were struck. There was no call for them in commerce due to the Depression. So they weren't made in 1931 either, and that is a time when the Standing Liberty Quarter was no longer being made, but because of the Depression, there was no need for them. By a congressional act, the Washington Quarter, featuring the first president's profile, was introduced in 1932 to celebrate the centennial of his birth, which is 200 years. So yeah, 1922, 1931, no quarters, and then 1932 is when the Washington Quarter comes into play. And as we know, it's still being made today, not in silver. They stopped making it in silver in 1964, but Washington is still on our quarter today. That's a long run to be on a coin. So I thought we'd go through just a couple quick more things. It has to do with the value of these coins. So here's an eBay ad I pulled up recently, and you can see here, this is a very poor condition 1916. How they know it's 1916, I'm not sure, but it is graded, it is certified by PCGS, and the grading is P001, and that stands for poor one. So I don't think it can get much worse than that. But look at this auction isn't over yet, and so far the bid is $1,501. So over $1,500 somebody's willing to pay for a very, very poor Standing Liberty Quarter from 1916. Just found that to be interesting, and you can see that there's 17 bids on it already. So better check the old change boxes that might have some SLQs in them, because if you got a 1916 in there, you've got some money. All right, let's look at one more. Now this is a sold auction. This is for a 1919D and XF40. And XF40 is certainly better than P001, but it's still not in great condition. And this thing sold for $700. So you can see if these things are certain dates and even in fairly poor condition, people can get a lot of money for them. So I just thought that was interesting. Just wanted to do a little bit of research, check out, the value based on eBay of a couple of these quarters, and we can see the value is pretty strong. All right, so last thing I want to do is take a look at the Red Book, look at some of the values and some of the mintages of these. And if those of you who don't have a Red Book, I would highly suggest you get one. These are great books for mintages and values. The values tend to be a little bit high in this book, but there's so much great information besides that in here. It's just a great reference material. So let's open up to the SLQs, and they start here. And as we talked about, 1916 to 1930. Goes through and gives a little bit of information about it. Let's move up a little bit. Let's look at where it starts down here. So we talked about the variety 1, no stars below eagle. Have some nice pictures here. Zoom in a little bit. So there you can see there's no stars, and you can also see the mint mark right there, just above the 19 to the left of the date. And there you go, the bare breast showing over on this side. So that is the variety number 1. And let me zoom back out just a little bit. And then we can see here the different varieties, 1916, 17, 17D, 17S, all variety 1. And there we talked about that 16, right? Look at how much that thing has in value. Even in poor condition, we saw that the P001 was going for $1,500. So, all right, and then as we get to the other ones, not quite as valuable, but they certainly have more value than just the silver content of them. So, but you know, to find one in these higher conditions is going to be pretty tough to do. So obviously, the 1916, 1917 are good quarters to have. Let's take a look at variety 2. You see here, this has got the stars below the eagle. So they went from 7 and 6 to 5, 5, and 3. And they also moved up the eagle a little bit. You can see how the eagles, see how close it is to the bottom there. So they moved it up a little bit. So they kind of centered it a little bit better. So that's the variety 2. Let's flip it over now. And let's look at some of these dates. Here's another picture of a error coin or a variety coin. It's a 1918 with the 8/7. Can you see how the 8 stamped over the 7? So that would be a good one to pick up. Here's the details on it. Fairly bad condition, $1,600. If you have a really nice one, $25,000. So 1918 with the 8/7s, pretty good one. And then we can look at the mintages, the 1917 variety 2, almost 14 million of them, but still carries a nice value. The 1917D variety 2, 17S variety 2, not quite as much, but wouldn't be, well actually these are actually more in better condition. So yeah, so in the San Francisco variety 2 has some good value. Come down, we see 14 million, 7 million, all the way down. Now the 1923S, that would be a good one to have. Look at that. But other than that, you know, they do pull more than just the regular silver content. Right now, the silver content without any wear on a quarter would be $3.98. So with wear on it, it's going to be, especially with these quarters, it's going to be quite a bit less. But you can see here, they're not going for $3.98. They're going for quite a bit more. So good to have in your collection. But now as we get down to the ones I had, remember all the ones I had were 1925 and above. You can see they're showing the recess date right there, much better. You can see here they made a lot of them. It's up to 27 D and S. The S for sure, they only made less than 400,000. That's going for pretty good money for sure. But the rest of these are, you know, pretty standard, $7.50. And everything over here is about the same as well. The 1925. Oh, 1925, I had a couple of those, didn't I? As they get up a little bit better. No, not much more than the rest of them. So the SLQ, huh? What a great piece of American history. Just a great quarter. A little bit of controversy surrounding it, but still beautiful. Made for many, many years. 1916 to 1930, and it was a classic in its time. And it's hard to find these in good shape in circulation. Obviously, you really won't find them in circulation, but buying them, if AppMex or somebody sells a roll at $10 face and you pick them up, you might find one of these slid in there, especially in these conditions, because they're not very heavy with silver. They're probably about 70-80% of the silver content of what they came with. But still pretty cool to have, pretty cool to have some in my stack. I don't collect them, but I definitely like having them. So yeah, just a classic American coin. Well, that's it for now. Thank you for watching, and always remember, let's keep talking bullion.